Hey everyone, Georgia here with Ukraine Matters. Both you and I have asked question why the support for Ukraine is not as fast and not as extensive as we would hope for. While the Western leaders are saying that they're doing whatever they can to support Ukraine, it seems that Ukraine just cannot get enough stuff to finally prevail over Russia. Well, I actually started digging in and found out some interesting details, and I would like to present them to you, and then at the end we can talk about why is the things happening that are happening. And to start off, let me just quickly switch here to the presentation view. It's new for me. So I want to talk about why the support for Ukraine is so small. And as with any research, I have some kind of assumptions and main points that I want to discuss before we go to the subject. The premise for this study for me was that the West doesn't do enough. So I came in, decided to test. Basically, the testable hypothesis that I made is whatever is supplied to Ukraine right now is not the same as, for example, the West has been doing for someone else. An important thing that to mention also here, because I'm going to be talking about the countries like US, and I know that people in US are very proud people, and I love US for a lot of that because you did bring a lot of democracy and did help us defend against the Nazis in the Second World War. But the important part is that we need to obviously take with a little bit of asterisk that there has been points of content with the US policies over the time. I still love you. And we need to obviously understand that support is essential for Ukraine. And without this support, Ukraine would never, ever, ever have won. So any kind of criticism that would come, this will not go towards criticizing any kind of deliveries for Ukraine, because those deliveries are what keeps Ukrainians free and happy and alive. Well, maybe not as happy as they would want to be. This is obviously not going to be with the case the precise apples to apples comparisons, because this is not going to be a controllable environment. Like, we're just looking into historic facts, and we cannot obviously see. All the calculations are going to be super rough, because the whole point of my channel is to keep it simple, right? This is for people that have not studied, they don't do data analysis, that don't do any kind of deep things. So I'm going to just keep things surface level. And if you want, you can ask from maybe some historian channels and so on, that they look more closely into these topics, and they will happily deliver on that. And because the most important point, I've been watching way too much Perun lately, so I'm gonna do the black slideshow, the black slides. But in all seriousness, Perun is amazing. His presentations are amazing. It's a little bit of a tribute here, but go watch Perun and all of his content right after this. So the first thing, understanding support for Ukraine, that we need to start off with is, well, how much support there actually was. There are sources that are actually keeping track of it. Like, there's obviously a lot of numbers, Excel spreadsheets, yada, 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 a lot of things. But all in all, we know that kind of both Stimson Center, like House of Commons Library, Kiel Institute for World Economy, they have somewhat similar numbers. But I'm going here down with the Kiel Institute for the World Economy numbers for the purpose of this presentation. And the point is that by the October 2, what Kiel was able to gather up and present, the total supplied, or like more importantly, military aid committed to Ukraine, because there was a little bit of a problem, because what is committed to Ukraine might not exactly come to Ukraine, or haven't been coming to Ukraine. This was especially a problem, for example, with some of the APCs. The Germany said they're going to do the exchange scheme where the Germany would send modern APCs to, I think it was Cyprus, and then Cyprus, or maybe it was Greece, Cyprus or Greece, and then they would send the older BMP ones to Ukraine. This not have not been working, but we saw definitely as the time went on, and by the end of summer, by the start of autumn, we already saw the gap between what was promised and what was actually delivered became smaller and smaller. So we're going to go with this number, but please be aware that there might be some discrepancies. What I'm counting here is both the equipment that was delivered and also the financial funds that were provided to Ukraine to buy equipment on the markets. And knowing that there is now, okay, we have Ukraine has gotten 39 billion by from the February 24th to the 2nd of October, 39 billion. This raises the important and most probably important question, is this a lot? And that's kind of the key question. So to answer that, let's look at a couple of cases. I think one of the interesting cases that's kind of happened recently, and a lot of people have been looking at it, is the Afghanistan case. So US have been in Afghanistan for 20 years. And in those 20 years, US has been also supplementing local militia groups and training them by totaling that number of what was dedicated was 82.9 billion US dollars. Importantly, the equipment part, which we are interested because we're looking mostly in the supply of equipment here, was 29%. That's about 18 billion. So if we roughly just divide this, like for 20-year campaign, 18 billion, that is about 1.1 billion US dollars per year. And second important point to discuss, you already see what kind of issues we're running into here, is that there was a difference in nomenclature. What was delivered to the Afghanis were mostly Afghan security forces, I believe they were called, was mostly firearms, machine guns, tactical gear, night vision, like personal armor, and so on. There are obviously some trucks and Humvees, but almost no like heavy equipment and very low number of APCs or infantry fighting vehicles. So only 189. That is not a lot for Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a big country. So that's not huge. That's not a huge amount of APCs. But US did deliver some planes to Afghanis. Most of them were transport planes. There was a couple of spy planes, couple of drones, but there is also a point, and I'm not going to actually show this in presentation. This is on purpose, on design. So US delivered 20 A-20s to the Afghani forces. And I want you to pause the video right now, right here, and just go to the Google and search what's an A-20 plane is, because it's listed as an interceptor, or was it a bomber? I don't remember. The point is, it was supposed to be a fighting plane. I want you then to Google this, like with the idea that the planes were delivered to Afghanis, and then Google what A-20 is, and then come back and we'll continue after you have your time with it. So with this kind of calculation, US has actually been like, not US, but yeah, US has actually been like, because what I didn't mention, it's 39 billion, but that was for both US and European Union. But if we just took the US numbers, so with current calculation, US has been supplying to Ukraine about 14.5 times more value than to Afghanistan. That is a huge difference. So US is supplying 14.5 times more stuff and valued equipment to Ukraine than to Afghanistan. Well, Ukraine is a big country, that's for sure. But the point is, that shows like there's layers upon layers about the fact that probably US trusts Ukrainians more and so on. So a lot of the questions that were raised over the time, like what is the commitment level of US? At this point, this is kind of like already starting to sound shady. Like, is it really that small of a support for Ukraine? But let's go further. So from 1941 to the end of 1945, US was under the commitment of the Lend-Lease Support Act to the Allies. US supplied equipment and other things, training and a lot of stuff, basically, during the Second World War to the Allies, including the Soviet Union. And let's compare, let's say, Soviet Union and Ukraine. how it was. So let's look at Lend-Lease. So Lend-Lease totaled of 50.1 billion US dollars by its hand. If we recalculate the money, because the value of money changed over the time, in current money, it's about 750 billion US dollars, maybe a little bit more by this point, of which the Soviet Union has gotten only 11 billion. So most of it was sent to the Allies. So the whole Soviet Union got 11 billion US dollars, and we know Lend-Lease was one of the major drivers to help Soviet Union win the war. In current numbers, it's a 180 billion US dollars that's been sent to the Soviet Union. And I here have like a picture with the distribution of how it was. And you obviously see that the distribution here, a lot of this is similar nomenclature what Ukraine is getting, except for one part. There's 12.8% of the agricultural equipment. So just for kind of calculation purposes, let's gonna take it out, and we're gonna calculate only the 156.9 billion US dollars that was the military items. I know there's also included services, costs, and so on. These numbers don't go into the supply to Ukraine equipment. So let's say, so per year of that campaign, US has supplied to the Soviet Union, the whole huge Soviet Union, US supplied 31.3 billion US dollars per year. That is current money. And then the important slide. Here we see the distribution of the, and I think I'm gonna just move myself just a little bit because you just cannot see it as clearly. Yes, there is like a little bit of a description here. I'm gonna make myself smaller. So that means that's like, if you look at this, you can see that it took some time to ramp up production and ramp up deliveries, with the logistics systems being established, with the new factories being opened that help supply this. So we see the trend that the first year was the slowest one. The second year was also kind of slow. And then the third year, the deliveries almost doubled. And then like the first year, from the first year, the second tripled. And from the second to third, they also doubled. So huge increase from when the Lend-Lease was started and to which was delivered. So if we take that first year, if it was a 750 billion US supplied currently, this is what we calculated with the agriculture and so on. The first year was as the weakest one. The Soviets of that year got only 5.4 billion US dollars in the current money. And I'm pretty sure you already see what is the problem here. With that calculation of what was delivered to Ukraine, just by this year alone, Ukraine has gotten 7.2 Lend-Lease's first year's deliveries made to Soviet Union. This leads to kind of a very clear conclusion. The support is unprecedented. The West are trying their hardest to supply Ukraine. They are actually delivering on their promises. And when the leaders are saying that, well, we indeed try to do everything that we can, and obviously we probably can talk about that they can do more, and we should talk about that they can do more, because while no comparison is perfect, any kind of delivered amount is not the point that we can relax. What we need to take away from this is that Western leaders are actually trying to supply Ukraine with everything. And the support of it is unprecedented. Ukraine is getting times and times more stuff than the Soviet Union did at the Second World War. But the deliveries should stop to Ukraine only when the war is over. Until the war is over, there is nothing to be talked about stopping. What we should be looking at is that graph when the first year was the weakest, and then the next years the deliveries just increase. So we can talk about what kind of bill Ukraine should pay, or European Union should pay, or anyone else should pay once the war is over and Ukrainians will stop dying. And links for all of the both Perun and all of the kind of sources that I mentioned here that are tracking this war, if you want to do calculations on your own, they're going to be in description. But Slava Ukraini, guys, and I think that we should be aware, while I do support the demand for our politicians to supply more stuff for Ukraine, I think we also need to be fair and give a little bit of a credit where credit is due. Our leaders are trying hard, Ukrainians are trying hard. And if what we see right now will continue next year and it will be comparable to what was happening during Lend-Lease, I'm just going to say it, Russia has no chance. Absolutely no chance. See you. Thanks so much for supporting this channel. I'll see you next time.